is 1947. The place is the United States of America. It is the post-war era, and man's quest for adventure is in full swing. If they were not swinging their dance partners from the sound of the big bands, or swinging a baseball bat in the big leagues, then they were taking swings of life. If they were not creating airplanes, creating new medical devices, creating new television networks, or the instant camera. How about a slinky? Now those are a lot of fun. And for my projects, duct tape and Elmer's glue. Let's not forget about our snacks, Nabisco, Oreo. And this, introducing our new project. First built around 1947. It is a 1947 streamlined midget trailer. Well, hello and welcome. In this series of videos, we will be discovering a lot of cool things. In part 1, we will discuss the history of this trailer and how I acquired it. We will look at the perks and some of the quirks that this trailer has. In part 2, we will discover how this trailer was made. We're going to get into it and dissect it and see just how this trailer has withstood the test of time of almost 80 years. We're going to remove its outer aluminum skin. We're going to look at the framing, the wood framing, to see how it was assembled back in the 1940s. And then we're going to work right through the shell, right down to all the components within this dining area / bedroom area. We'll look at the kitchenette. We'll disassemble from the ceiling again. We'll disassemble it past the floor. And then we will compare it to a popular magazine of that era. Part 3 will be very exciting when we repair and reconstruct everything that's wrong with this trailer in order so that we can take it back down the road instead of leaving parts all over the road. We'll be doing woodworking, which will include a glue laminated outer structural frame and the cabinetry within this sleeping area and the kitchenette. We'll be doing metal work, which will include fabrication and welding. And we'll also add a little water system to this trailer. For finished work, we'll be working with primers and paint for both the wood and the metal components. And finally, to top it off, we're going to spend a lot of time polishing this gem so it'll have a beautiful mirror-like finish. So it'll glow so other people will be attracted to it just like I was. It's going to take some time and a lot of work to rebuild this project, but I'm excited about it. And I invite you to come along with me over the next however long this series takes to rebuild this little teardrop trailer. Teardrop. Teardrop. Wait, it just hit me. Are those tears of joy or tears of pain? Well, I really want to know. I guess there's only one way we're going to find out. I'm betting it's going to be tears of joy when we're all done with this. So come along with us, won't you? Please join us next time when we begin Part 1, the history, the acquisition, and the overview of this wonderful little trailer. Before we jump into the destruction of this trailer, before we jump into the dismantling of this trailer, I'd like to give you a short history lesson. I discovered this trailer through research after I bought the camper. Our little camper's concept came from somebody's head, as a dream, as an idea. It went from their head down to their heart, out their little fingertips, then onto a piece of paper where it was designed, and then they physically built the thing. Although the title of our camper says 1947, we know that it was in fact thought up way before 1947. We know that because it is found in a popular magazine. And magazine what I'm talking about is the Popular Mechanics magazine of 1940. In February and the March magazines, they have a two-part series on our little trailer. In each of the magazines is part 1 and a part 2. It shows you the design of how these little trailers are put together. And over our series of videos, we'll go ahead and we'll dive deeper into these, and so you can actually see the concept. Now, from what I've been able to find through research, campers of this era were a third of the height, similar to this one here in this magazine, which is low and aerodynamic, giving the user a bed to sleep on and a kitchen to prep food. With this bread loaf style, a person can stand up, prepare food, sit at a table, and have a place to sleep all inside of 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor. My belief is that the creator of our camper was a huge fan of the story Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Our little unit, at 5 feet tall, 6 feet wide, and 9 feet long, not including the tongue, is the perfect size. In the Popular Mechanics magazine, the camper is called the Midget, or Tig Diem, which could be Latin or Greek for not so big, not so small, but just right. At this time of filming in July of 2020, I'm unaware of any other streamlined campers that have been built from the 1940s. There is, however, a very nice little camper built from a couple over in California. They built it about 10 years ago using the Popular Mechanics magazine's plans. A big shout out to them and for all the hard work that they did to build their little camper. Other than that, I know of no other streamlined campers that are in existence today. If you have one from the 1940s or built one from the plans out of the magazine, I'd love to hear from you about the process that you did to restore or build your little piece of history. Well, that concludes our brief history lesson of our little camper today. Please join us next time when we'll talk about how I acquired my little camper. Welcome back to Part 1, the acquisition. I've always loved the vintage style trailer. I love the aerodynamics, the vintage look, the simplicity of the trailers. I knew that someday I'd either buy one or build one. When I first saw my little camper, I was at a car show, a vintage car show. I love seeing all the old hot rods and what people have done to restore old vehicles. Well, as I was walking up and down the aisles, I saw this little glimmer, a mirror-like reflection. It kept shining in my eye, and I looked down the row and kind of up the hill a little bit, and I said, "Hey, is that a little baby teardrop?" And it was. I looked around it. I talked with the owner of the camper. He gave me a little bit of information on it. And then we talked a little bit about price, and I kind of cringed because it was more than I wanted to spend. I really liked the camper though. To me, it was the perfect size. But I had to keep within my budget, so I had to walk away from it. And then one day, probably about 6 months later, I was looking at the sales ads and I came across this little trailer again. And I said, I've got to go see that trailer again. So I called up the guy on the phone, talked a little bit about it, and we met up over at his house. The owner and I went over the trailer once again, from top to bottom, side to side, front to back, and boy, did it sure stink. After 80 years of I don't know what was in it, it really stunk. And I said to myself, this thing is a total piece of junk. It needs a complete and total restoration. But how cool is this? How much fun would it be to restore this back to something really vintage and really cool? And then out of my mouth, I heard the words, Tim, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to take this trailer off your hands. Once we agreed upon the price, then we hooked the trailer up to my vehicle, and then we went over to the bank and took care of all the paperwork. And then it was mine. Time to drive her home. So I was about 20 miles away from home, and I was just going to pull it down the freeway going 70 miles an hour. But Tim said, you know, I think you might want to go a little slower with this and probably take the side roads home. I didn't really know why, but I figured, well, I'll take his advice. So I took the side roads home, and 35 miles an hour and hitting even the smallest little bump, I could see why he told me not to take the freeway. After every bump, I would look behind me, and little chunks and pieces of the trailer would be falling off and bouncing down the road. Thankfully, nothing important, just old rotted wood. But still, 70 miles an hour, I think he was right. But we made it home in all good time, and then it was time to share my little new project with my wife. I knew she'd be excited. With joy and excitement, and maybe a little bit of doubt in my mind, I walked into the house and encouraged my wife to come on out and see what I had just bought. With a pushed out smile and great enthusiasm, she came out of the house and was elated at what she saw. Not the trailer, but a husband that was excited about this new project, this new venture. Yeah. I knew she was on board because after I showed her the trailer, she kept saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. That's great, honey. And great it will be. This video has been a brief overview of the history and the acquisition of my little midget streamlined trailer, how I acquired it, where it's been, and where it's going to go. That concludes part 1 of this video series. In our next video, part 2, we're going to be discussing how our little trailer was made. We're going to compare it to the Popular Mechanics magazine. We're going to see the similarities of how it was designed and how our little camper actually was built.